My father once said, "Debt is the chain that shackles a person's dreams." But I doubt he ever imagined that the very person to bind me with my first chain would be his own wife, my mother. I was 20, sitting in a college lecture hall, when a call from American Express changed my life forever. My mother had stolen my identity, opened credit cards in my name, and racked up tens of thousands of dollars in debt. I didn't just lose my credit, I lost my youth trying to rebuild it. And I lost my trust in the very idea of family. But that was only the beginning. I soared into a life of luxury, only to crash harder than I ever thought possible. $200,000 in debt and fired without warning. And yet today, at 50 years old, I've done what no one ever expected. In 1995, I was a sophomore in college, home for spring break, when I got a call on my mom's landline. It was from American Express. A soft-spoken woman on the other end gently confirmed that I was the holder of a gold credit card with a balance of over $5,000. I gave a dry laugh, assuming it was a mistake, and told her I was just a student. I hadn't applied for any credit card. In fact, I never even held one in my hand. But she wasn't wrong. And I, just a skinny college kid with my head still full of dreams, was completely unprepared for the truth about to unfold. Turns out, while I was living in the dorms and trying to stay focused on school, my own mother had secretly used my social security number to open not one, but 5 different credit card accounts. She maxed out over $12,000 on things I had no clue about. Shopping, bills, maybe even luxuries I'd never touched. And the worst part? She didn't pay back a single cent. I remember the night I found out. I sat frozen in my room, feeling like my skin was being peeled away. One layer at a time. My mother, the woman I had believed to be my whole world, the one who raised me alone after my father died, was the very person who brought me crashing down before my life had even truly begun. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty, as if someone had stolen my name, my future, and the youth I hadn't even had a chance to live. I did something no child ever wants to do. I reported my own mother to the police. There was no other choice. My credit history was destroyed. Financial institutions started calling nonstop. I had to prove I was a victim, step by step, through every investigation, every piece of legal paperwork. I was spared from testifying in court, but my mother wasn't. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison. And from that point on, our relationship became a silent space neither of us knew how to fill. During that time, I juggled classes, part-time jobs, and the exhausting process of rebuilding my credit from below zero. I spent my nights buried in personal finance law. I sat through job interviews where I had to explain why my credit score looked like a disaster zone. I lived through things most of my peers couldn't even begin to imagine. I still remember someone asking me once, "If your mom apologized, would you forgive her?" I smiled, but it was a painful kind of smile, because at that point, I didn't even know how to begin forgiving someone who had forced me to grow up with such bitterness. Forgiveness, maybe, was something that could only come after I reclaimed my life. That's when I began to understand. Some wounds don't bleed, but they leave scars that never fully fade. And some lessons cost you your identity, your trust, and the most beautiful years of your life. But I didn't stay broken. I got up, not to take revenge on my mother, but to give myself back the freedom I had lost. And that was only the beginning. By the time I turned 30, I believed I had finally escaped the shadows of my past. I had graduated, albeit with a modest associate degree after years of struggle, and landed a stable job on the West Coast, making close to $80,000 a year. To me, that alone was a huge accomplishment, especially considering I had started from financial ruins created by my own family. And maybe because I had lived in scarcity for so long, the moment I earned my first real money, it felt like a starving person finally getting a big drink of water. I started living like there was no tomorrow. I shopped like I was making up for a stolen youth, spent money like every dollar was a declaration. I've escaped my past. I spent 3 months traveling across Australia and New Zealand, an unforgettable experience, but also the first step in pulling me away from reality. Every photo I posted online was a snapshot of freedom, of success, But behind the lens was an instability I willfully ignored. I rented a sleek apartment, bought expensive furniture, and before long, my spending outpaced my income. Little things like daily coffee, impulsive flights, vet bills, car repairs, they each seemed small, but together they formed a bottomless pit. But I didn't stop, because I thought, I deserve this. I had no kids, no one else to take care of. I was the textbook definition of a sink. Single income, no kids. And the voice in my head kept echoing, if you're not living for yourself, then who are you living for? Then came 2014, the year I thought I was stepping into true stability. I decided to do something grown up. I bought a brand new $35,000 car and a small $150,000 house. The only problem? I had no money for a down payment. The solution? I borrowed from my 401k retirement fund. At the time, I convinced myself it was a smart investment. After all, the house would appreciate over time. I told myself this was a turning point, that I was building equity, owning property, growing wealth. But reality was different. I was living paycheck to paycheck. As soon as my salary hit the account, it was gone. And I was still carrying $20,000 in credit card debt, most of it from nearly a decade of unrestrained spending. Sick pets, car troubles, travel, and the latest gadgets. And then, almost like destiny had been waiting, I was about to be knocked down again. But this time, not by someone else. This time, it was my own financial naivete. Just when I thought I had it all, house, car, stable job, a sudden twist just a year later took everything away. And that downfall forced me to confront a question I had avoided for an entire decade. What is freedom really? Is it the ability to spend without limits, or the peace of not fearing tomorrow? Back then, I didn't have the answer, but I was about to learn it the hard way, losing my job, losing my income, and standing on the brink of bankruptcy, all in the span of an ordinary Monday. I thought I was stepping into a hopeful new chapter. I had a home, a car, a steady job, good credit. After years of struggle, I believed I had finally made it, that I had built something solid. But the truth was, I had built a dream out of sand, and all it took was a single breeze for everything to collapse. In April of 2015, I lost my job. No warning, no signs, no clues that Monday would become the day everything turned upside down. That morning, my boss, someone I once considered an ally, asked to meet me at a Starbucks at 9 a.m. When I arrived, he was already sitting there, arms crossed, lips curled in a smug half-smile. He spoke just one sentence. "I think you should call a lawyer. As of today, your contract is terminated." I don't even remember how I reacted. The shock slowed everything down. There was no formal meeting, no real explanation. But I knew exactly why. I had reported him to HR for being absent for weeks, faking reports, pretending to be at the office through emails when he hadn't shown up at all. I thought speaking up would make me the right one. But what I didn't understand was, in the world of behind-the-scenes connections and senior-level friendships, right and wrong mean nothing when you're not the one holding power. 48 hours after my report, I was out. And with that, I lost the fragile sense of safety I had just barely begun to build. I drove home in silence. When I walked in the door, I opened my phone and checked my bank account. It showed exactly $1,200. That was it. I burst into tears. Not the dramatic kind, the unconscious kind, the kind that escapes before you even realize it's coming. I was completely alone. No family to back me, no emergency savings, no safety net. I sat on the front steps of my porch, calling a few friends, saying anything, just anything, so I didn't feel like I was disappearing into some endless void. And when I hung up, I said one sentence to myself: no, this is not going to be what defines my life. But the punches weren't done. Just a month later, my 18-year-old cat, my companion since college, fell into a diabetic coma. I panicked and rushed her to the emergency vet. The bill came to over $6,000. I knew I couldn't afford it, but I swiped my card anyway, because she was the last piece of family I had left. But just a few weeks later, she passed. I sat in silence in my living room, staring at the chair where she used to curl up. And I felt like I'd lost another part of my soul. I was 40 years old, no job, no real family to lean on, and nearly $200,000 in debt hanging over me like a monster, $28,000 in credit cards, $8,000 in student loans, and over $150,000 in mortgage debt. All of it snarling at me, threatening to devour me whole. That was when I understood. No one was coming to save me. It was either I change or I keep living under the crushing weight of debt and failure. So I picked up a small notebook, and on the first page, I wrote in big, bold letters, "The Survival Plan." And I started over, not with hope, but with steel-hard resolve. This will be the last time in my life I let everything fall through my fingers. The small notebook titled Survival Plan began with a blank page and a list of numbers that made it hard to breathe. Every debt, every loan, every credit card balance. I wrote them all down with a trembling yet determined hand. No more denial. No more halfway measures. Just one raw truth. Either I start over or I lose everything, forever. Just 2 months after that shocking layoff, I received a job offer that still feels like a dream. A 1099 contract, freelance, no benefits or paid time off, at $50 an hour, equivalent to $104,000 a year, a full $25,000 more than the job I had just been fired from. It was the first sign that the universe hadn't completely turned its back on me. I didn't celebrate. I didn't shop. I didn't post a single thing on social media. I took my first paycheck and transferred $200 straight into savings. Not because I was rich, but because I finally understood the importance of respecting every single dollar. I began living with ruthless simplicity. Every week, I allocated a small portion of my income toward debt. $200 for student loans, $300 for credit cards. Any extra, I split between savings, mortgage principal, or whichever debt had the highest interest rate. I gave up all vacations, Christmas, New Year's, Independence Day included. On the days others rested, I sat alone at my desk, because for me, every working hour brought me closer to freedom. I even rented out the tiny house I had once been so excited to buy, relocating to a more affordable city. Every dollar from rent went to paying down principal. I canceled cable, cooked every meal, shopped secondhand, drove an old car. I learned the difference between needs and wants, and for the first time in my life, I chose needs. In 2017, I was fortunate to begin working remotely, and that gave me the freedom to move around, reduce expenses further, and stay on track. I never missed a single payment, not once. I didn't wait until I had enough money to start. I started so that one day I would have enough. Each month, I reviewed my survival plan notebook, crossing off paid debts, rewriting what was left. Every time I paid off a credit card, I rewarded myself with a small cup of coffee or an old book. Nothing more. I celebrated birthdays with just a small cake and a quiet smile. And that was enough, because to me, every birthday was a milestone, a step closer to freedom. Then 2 years passed, then 3, then 5. I was still working for the same company, still following the same rhythm. Disciplined, mindful, and deliberate. No one around me knew how different my life was from theirs, but I knew. I was no longer the girl who once cried on the porch with only $200 to her name. I was climbing back up, slowly, steadily, and with purpose. And then, in early 2023, after 8 years of perseverance, the contract ended. I didn't panic. This time, I had an emergency fund. I had prepared for this. I took on a temporary maternity cover role at another company. And just a few months later, my old company invited me back. But this time, I returned not as someone begging for a job, but as someone who knew the value of every working hour and every financial decision. I didn't just pay off debt. I paid myself back with something far more valuable, a truly free life. In April 2025, I turned 50. No party, no cake, no colorful balloons, just a quiet morning. I made myself a cup of coffee, opened my laptop, logged into my HISA account, and saw the number that officially surpassed the remaining balance on my mortgage. One final transfer, and every debt I've ever owed would be wiped from my life, forever. The little house I bought back in 2014 for $150,000. At the time, a gamble that forced me to borrow against my 401k just to make the down payment is now worth over $310,000. My 2013 Honda still runs like a champ. The 2021 Toyota truck I got at a discounted price from a friend paid off. I even have an old travel trailer full of memories and a notebook packed with scribbled dates of every single debt I've paid off over the past decade. And me, I no longer owe a single penny to anyone. I have a 401k, a Roth IRA, an emergency fund that continues to grow steadily. I'm not a millionaire. I don't own flashy real estate or a portfolio full of tech stocks. But I have something money can't buy: peace. I know exactly how many hours of work each brick in this home represents. I know which debts I had to carry through holidays I skipped, sales I passed on, and moments I chose responsibility over indulgence. And maybe that's why I cherish every little thing I have, more than anyone who was simply handed their comfort ever could. When I look back at my journey, from being 20 and having my identity destroyed by my own mother, to my 30s where I lived under the illusion of freedom and made mistake after mistake, to my 40s when I lost my job, my footing, and thought I'd never recover, I can say this: at 50, I didn't just survive. I rebuilt, with my own two hands. No godparents, no supportive spouse, no miracles from the outside, just me and a relentless refusal to surrender to fate. I'm no longer the girl who maxed out a $6,000 credit card trying to save a dying cat. I'm no longer the woman who broke down in tears because her bank account barely held $100. I am now an independent woman, resilient and crystal clear on what can destroy a life and what can rebuild it. Every day now feels lighter. I wake up without the crushing weight of debt hanging over my head like a sharpened nail. I can work if I want to, but I can also take a week or two off, just because. I can watch my lazy new cat sprawled out on the couch and feel no guilt about the vet bills I might have to face. I've done something most people think is impossible. I went from a debt-ridden, solitary woman to someone completely free, financially and emotionally. And as you read this, maybe you're still somewhere in the middle of your own journey. Maybe you're drowning in debt. Maybe you've lost your sense of direction. Or maybe you've just stopped believing that things can get better. But believe me, if you stay patient, stop pointing fingers, and just start moving, bit by bit, dollar by dollar, that day will come. Because I used to be you. And now I've become me. An imperfect version, yes, but free, whole, and fiercely proud. If you're still drowning in unpaid bills, lying awake at night with worry, or simply feeling like your life has veered off track, let me tell you this: you haven't lost. Not as long as you're still breathing. Not as long as you still want to change. I don't have a magic formula. No guaranteed financial advice. What I do have is a real story, with real scars, real falls, and the kind of comebacks that demand everything from the soul. I've spent half my life learning not to give up, and if I can do it, you can too. In your own way, at your own pace. Start with something small, a clear decision, a savings jar with just $10. A simple habit, practiced consistently. Don't wait to be perfect to begin. Begin so you can grow stronger with every step. And no matter how long or how far you go, no matter how tired or uncertain you feel, please remember, you deserve a life that isn't shackled by debt. You deserve freedom, financial, emotional, and personal. The journey might be long, it might be lonely, but it is not meaningless. And when you finally reach that last day, the day you look around and whisper, "This is mine, and I don't owe anyone a single thing anymore," you'll realize it was all worth it. This is where the story ends. If it meant something to you, please leave a comment, give it a like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep making more videos like this. Thank you for listening. Take care, and see you next time.